Welcome to the making of Markdown 101 and the Brain software. This is going to be a different kind of video for me, a little more off the cuff, a lot less editing. It's going to be a lot messier. I wanted to show you how I use my various tools in order to create the current video. Mostly how I use Memex, TheBrain, and some internet research to get the information that I was looking for. I've actually completed creating the video, so I'm going to kind of backtrack over a lot of things that I looked at in hopes that it's going to be helpful for you. Now, one of the things I do is I pretty much put all of my scripts, which end up becoming Medium articles, I put them together in Ulysses. So I start by talking to some colleagues, I look at what their questions are, and I put these in a material sheet. Usually that gives me enough information to get started actually creating my script. Okay, and I just get going. I usually am in the hybrid format here so I can see my outline being created and see as I paste images in here, kind of again giving me a feel as to where I'm going to go in the long term. In this case, my first question was, well, I've used Markdown for years. How in the world did it ever come to be? So I went ahead and started searching. Okay, and one of the first things that I found was information on John Gruber. Now, I found his website, which of course I can look at here in the Brain, or I can jump over to my browser and gather more information. Now, as you might know from one of my other episodes, I want to say it's episode 7, I use Memex as well. So here I could go ahead and take any notes that I might want to, or in my case, I'm just going to go ahead and search inside here. Okay, and nope, I do not want to stay in there. Let's look at everything. There we go. There's my piece of information. We can see what I gathered from it. Okay, and if we click here, I can actually go back and though the contrast is not really great with this very dark website, you can see where I gathered all of my information. Okay, and so this allowed me to go ahead and understand what was going on, not only gather John Gruber's name, but also, as we went down to the bottom here, I learned about Aaron Swartz as well. Now that, of course, leads me to Wikipedia to actually go and search for each of them. Okay, gather information, and here we can see his involvement with Markdown, which is a lightweight markup language. Okay, and it allowed me to go forward from there. So now I've got my basic history, and I wanted to dig deeper, right? Because one of the things that people that I work with who are not software engineers said, well, how is this different than a programming language? And I felt I needed to have an aside. I needed to talk about the differences between programming languages, query languages, and markup languages. Now, of course, in doing that, that meant that I had to extend my brain, right? I need to figure out where did computer science fit in here. So, of course, I went to the outline of academic disciplines, and I simply did find computer science. Oh, and there it is actually on the page. Please note, I'm very bad at spelling. So anyways, we've been able to find computer science very quickly and notice that it is directly under formal science. Ooh, mathematics. I'm going to add that right now. Because often I will add things to my brain as I go along in order to ensure that I have the structures that I want when I need them. Okay, so now I've got computer science, and I can just add, in this case, I just added by dragging down, putting in a comma, and adding languages. Then I could talk about I could talk about the major language styles that are out there, markup, query, and programming. These are the ones you're going to come up with most often. Now, there are some other ones out there, but again, they're very esoteric, and getting to know much more than these 3 levels isn't going to provide a great return on investment. So if you just spend a little bit of time understanding the difference between these 3, you're going to have a significantly better technological understanding. Now, of course, we want to focus on markup, so I went ahead and I pulled down some markup languages, right? Ones that I was familiar with, such as SGML, which stands for Structured General Markup Language, HTML, Hypertext Markup Language, and Markdown, which the first time I heard of it, I just enjoyed the word due to its farcical nature against the markup language. So now that I've added this, I can go ahead and add a little bit of history. And of course, this is the information that I pulled from MX from the Daring Fireball site, which is John Gruber's site. So now I have this, and I can start going through the individual items. I felt that just by going ahead and giving you a test page here, showing you how you can collapse them. Okay, I do have to admit, most of the time I'm actually using show Markdown so that as I enter everything, I can see all of the escapes, all of the number of hashtags that are being used. You can also, I think this is another cool thing, when you're actually in a bullet list, you can actually collapse at the nested levels. Again, this can be very useful when you're trying to gather a very specific set of procedures, things of that nature, where you may or may not want to see all of the sub bullets, so you can collapse them just to make yourself move a little bit faster. And as we went through this, I loved going through all the various different items. The one thing I will say is that the code blocks in here are not really the best. It's not something that I find to be super helpful. There's no syntax highlighting. And of course, as somebody who's used to working inside an IDE like Visual Studio Code, without syntax highlighting, it's a little more difficult to read this. Let's face it, that's why we have Markdown languages. That's why we have markup languages, because they often will highlight portions of what we're looking for to make it easier to consume. But I wanted to show you this because often it's very useful to have this type of a highlight feature to make things a little bit easier to use. And then finally, back in the day, I was used to actually being able to create tables in earlier versions of TheBrain by using, and as well as in OneNote, by using pipes, spaces, space, test, and that would go ahead and create tables. But this has always been painful, cumbersome. See, I tell you, I can't spell. Okay. Anyways, I've never really liked that method. Yes, it functions, and from the looks of it here, I could use it in a pinch, and it would make the appropriate. It would create the appropriate. TheBrain would convert it into the new format of the TheBrain table, making it easier to use. I just don't see myself building these very fast, and so I've kind of found methods to avoid it. And then finally, speed is everything. One of the reasons I use a second brain is because I can search for things very quickly, I can get the data, and I only need to capture a piece of data a few milliseconds before I need to talk about it in order to sound like a highly educated individual. What I found is that my listeners, when I'm in a conversation, they don't care that I just pulled that information out of a second brain moments before. They care that the relevant information is being told to them. They would rather I take that fraction of a second to look something up and give them the right answer, or give them a more educated answer, rather than saying, oh, I'll look up that later. because often it allows us to continue to make relevant decisions going forward. This is why the snippet tool that I use is a key part of my second brain. I am hopeful that TheBrain, probably in version 14 or 15, will add a Markdown template tool, because I think it will be extremely powerful and allow them to compete with the likes of Notion, Rome, and Obsidian, which have a lot of mind share at this point in time. With that, I'm going to end my making of episode 008, Markdown 101 and the Brain software. If you like this, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know. I'll make more of these because I think this one is a little less formal and you get to see a little bit more of how we use everything. So again, if you like it, please give us a thumbs up.